E31 project update.
I don't read the newspapers.
The motor, as you saw in the last video, fits, which is freaking amazing. Now it's time to get down to the details of how to make the motor fit properly in the engine bay. There's a couple of dimensions to this question that's not just as simple as mount the motor in the engine bay. Mount the motor in the engine bay, obviously. There is what the suspension geometry is going to look like, what the suspension parts are going to look like, how the steering column or the shaft in the engine bay is going to go to what kind of steering. So, you know, I've been noodling about this a lot and having some conversations with my engineer that I'm working with this project.
You can see he hasn't pulled the braking stuff yet. Right, we're going to have to eliminate the hydro boost, right?
Yeah, I know. We removed the stock E31 hydro boost system because we're going to replace it with something else. So Anthony and I tore that out. Taking the brake hydraulics out of the car, just draining the reservoir for now. And then underneath the dashboard, there's the connection to the brake pedal. So all that is out because we got to redesign that at some point too. Unbolting the brake booster. You see him back there? There are four nuts, right?
Yep, 4 nuts on the studs on the booster.
Yep.
Or I'm sorry, the master cylinder.
Yep, you see it right back there, right there. You see it? That's it. Now we're going to the front of the car. And let's take, whoop. Let's take it off. The master cylinder. America and Europe is watching, Anthony. So no pressure. All right, there we go. There's the brake hydraulics out of the car. And then my thought was, then I was going to fold up the modified carrier to see how much space we have.
Yeah, I think we'll use this for mock-up.
Yeah. And we had some really cool, interesting ideas. We're probably going to go with a coilover setup, but it's going to be basically the same thing.
So you're going to use the same thrust arms?
That's a good question. The E31 has what are called thrust arms. They are lateral arms that control movement of the chassis. You know, BMW had that, and they still do it for big heavy cars. To control this movement, they put these additional arms in the front. And the geometry of the E31 has a lot more caster than the E36 does. What that does is that makes the steering a little bit more difficult. The car doesn't steer as well and as crisply as an E36 does. And yes, for the internet trolls, they're going to come out. Part of that is because the E36 has a rack and pinion steering. The E31 has a steering gearbox, like a truck. So yes, that's a big piece of it.
Ideally, if we could put E36 control arms in this, and just, I'm curious to compare the strut tower distance on this versus an E36.
Suspension settings, and like I said, that additional caster, while it makes E31 much more stable at very high speeds, it kind of slows down the reaction because it stretches out the wheelbase. Our thought is, I want to eliminate the thrust arms, and what if we could put in E36 front suspension in that car? Now, tell me that wouldn't be cool. Did you ever find the tensioner for that belt?
No, we did not.
Okay, so that's on your list too. Come on, mister. Just from a servicing perspective, stretch belts.
Yeah.
They suck.
Yeah.
Suck to work on. So yeah, I'm thinking of, because we're going to maintain the car, obviously.
Obviously, yeah.
So I don't want people cursing me for the rest of the time.
Right.
You know, that would also give us more room to play with, because you're right, we're eliminating the thrust arms. And
We have to eliminate the...
Oh, no, I agree.
Yeah, we have to do rack opinion anyway.
No,
And
absolutely.
I think we're going to have a really hard time doing a rear steer.
I would agree.
Right.
I've thought about that some, and I can't in my head picture that working there, just from a space perspective. Otherwise,
Well,
the car's gonna have this
geometry-wise
much-
also.
Yeah. But the car's gonna have this much clearance off the ground then.
Yeah.
Because the rack would be underneath the engine.
Well, the rack is going to be underneath the engine no matter what.
I know, but I'd like to figure out a way to tuck it up as high up as possible.
Yeah. I know there's, it's not ideal. I mean, I'm a little concerned about geometry-wise, obviously, because that's the thing, is they usually have the rack a little higher up, I think. But
I mean, that's also why, like I said, I was considering electric steering. You know, there was some electric steering options I was looking at.
well, even so, you could depower a power.
No.
Like, you'd want to do that anyway.
Yeah,
But I'm talking about a pure electric steering box.
Right. Well, you can get the electric steering column.
Yes, but then that interfaces to a regular rack and pinion rack. Yeah, I know. I've seen that. I looked that up too.
Because it'll give us the ability, well, a very wide range of upgrades we can do in terms of custom coilovers to the car, that sort of thing. The steering will be much improved. And using an E36 rack and pinion would really, and E36 M3 by the way, would really enhance the steering feel and how quickly the car will change directions, which I think would be brilliant. So what we do in the video is we are bolting up the E31 stock suspension again to take some geometry measurements. You know, I want to see what the geometry looks like.
That might be the solution for this, to do E36 geometry.
I think that's a good idea.
In order to see if we could use the E36 M3 front end, if you will, suspension on the E31, what we did is our trusty and tried 786 endurance racing car, I'm building a new motor, which I just finished. I'm very excited about that. It has no motor, so it's all open there. So on an early Saturday morning, Matt came in and we did a 3D scan of the engine bay of the E36, as well as, ready for this?
Do you have a subframe out of the car?
Yes, of course I do. A brand new one, actually.
The last brand new E36 M3 front cradle in North America.
It's laying up in that lovely corner.
E36 front carrier, E31 stock front carrier, a little modification in the middle. The E36 carrier is an inch center to center on the mounting bolt holes, an inch wider.
Not another new E36 M3 cradle, except the one that you saw in the video. And no, you can't have it. It's mine.
The E36 carrier, because we think we can maybe make that kind of work with an adapter plate, which would be very interesting.
We scanned that, and then Matt did some, voodoo magic on overlaying the different models to see how that's going to work, as well as bolting up the E36 M3 front carrier engine cradle to the front E31, which is, interestingly enough, we found that the E36 M3 front engine cradle is 1 inch bolt hole wider than the E31. Funky, huh? The interesting thing is that E36 M3 cradle, if we can adapt it or make a custom cradle based upon that, will allow us to bolt up E36 M3 rack and pinion to the car. And then when we took some measurements, we can put a steering shaft from the stock location to the E36 M3 rack, I think fairly easily. So booyah on that. Now, the issue the E36 M3 subframe, or people call it a subframe, it's not, it's called an engine cradle, is the fact that only one bolt hole lines up. So the one side lines up, this one is a little bit shorter, so we have to make an adapter plate for that if we're going to use that one. And then the right side is a little bit further out. So we have to make an adapter plate to bolt up to the stock E31 locations, and then have another nutsert that'll bolt the E36 carrier. Really at this point where we're going is I think we're going to make a custom cradle. Kind of a hybrid between the two, which will let me run E36 type front suspension with an E36 M3 rack and pinion with a custom steering shaft to the rack and pinion. I think it'll be cool though. The other thing we talked about is motor mounts and motor mount arms.
Use the 3D drawings that we have of this and this to
That's what I want to
print
do.
some mounts.
The only question
Mount
is going to be,
arms?
I got to look back at I got to flip this in the model
Yep.
and look if we can land that on
on the carrier. I think we can. I thought when we looked at it
because
originally.
the factory mount would have been up here,
Yes, correct.
but this is now at the back.
Right, but I thought we talked about going from here forward like this.
Yeah.
Like this.
I mean, if I can make something come off of this,
Yes.
to land closer, like right here, I'd rather do that.
Yeah, up to me, I agree. There's going to be stress on
Yeah.
that member, so we're going to have to reinforce it or something.
Yeah, but I have this modeled anyway, so I think.
Can you use the model and try?
Yeah, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna flip this just to see to put this in the proper location and see what the distance is from the original mount to where we need the new
Yep.
mount.
And what I'm going to do is, like I said, in the
Maybe we're
next
just looking at it weird because this is a longer engine.
could be because my plan is, like I said, next week to have this cleaned up so we can bring the car down.
Yeah.
And then I was going to have this, you know, held on the top of that, and then put the carrier in. That's right.
Yep.
And then lower it again.
Obviously, the E31 motor mounts are not going to work because it's a different configuration. So we looked at motor mounts with another BMW, you know, a V8, which I think will work. So I picked up a set of those. Matt has them.
We might need that plus another joint in between.
I think we are.
You know, 'cause I think we're gonna have to hug the frame rail really tight.
Agreed. So I think the steering might have multiple U joints in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have some. That's so easy.
It's gonna. I know, but it's gonna look like this.
Yeah. Apparently, the cost of metal 3D printing has greatly decreased,
Interesting.
which would make it very cool. We could make this thing look like it's a casting, like totally like organic, not like finished product looking OEM.
Is it strong though?
Oh yeah. You can 3D print aluminum, stainless, ink and
Oh no, dude! I looked at that 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Metal 3D printing. But you know how much the machines were?
Oh, $1 million.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The company that makes the units for BMWs, BMW,
Straxus.
it might be it. BMW 3D prints all their water pumps in house today.
What?
Every water pump's 3D printed in house.
Wow.
You know why?
Why?
Because they make changes to water pumps apparently very often for efficiency purposes. So instead of sending Bosch, all right, here's the CAD, make us a pump, 6 months later we get it.
Yeah.
They print it, they test it on the test mule, yep, put it in. It's a
Production.
0.05% increase
Wow.
for the production. You're just gonna make the arms
I want to
as
make them.
part of the plate.
Yeah, it's all going to be one piece.
Okay.
And then engine mount, and then. So here's another thought that I had is that if we're way off from getting anywhere near touching the
Yep, the carrier.
the carrier,
Right.
maybe the thing to do would be to just make another bracket that goes off the frame rail, just for the motor, which would be cool because it would allow you to drop the cradle without unsupporting the engine.
That's kind of cool.
But we have to see if there's enough meat to attach to.
Yeah, I would
It'd be
not.
like plating the surface and then
Yes.
adding some kind of a drop mount.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
that'd probably have to catch the bottom side and the top. It's something we could look at.
Well, I just want to make sure that they're hydraulic. Gotta make sure they're hydraulic. I believe they are. I'm pretty
They
sure.
should.
they are.
There's a lot of stuff happening underneath there. So we got the cradle, and then we have to design custom arms to go from the stock mounting locations down to the motor mounts. And obviously they have to be strong because this engine is not a featherweight, it's a very hefty girl, okay? So these have to be strong mounts. And they cannot interfere on the passenger side with the dry sump hoses, and they can't interfere on the driver's side with the steering shaft. So a lot of considerations there. So we're trying to figure that out. The other thing is that we were having an issue supporting the engine by itself in the engine bay. Because of the width of the E31, we didn't have, and I have a bunch of engine support mounts that were quite long enough or tall enough to support the engine to the point where I was comfortable with lifting up the car with just the mounts. I found an online company that actually made a engine support brace that was long enough and strong enough, and we modified it a little bit to give it a little bit more height to support the engine. So now the engine can be supported within the engine bay, in the front with that new brace and the back with one of my other braces that'll fit. And the point there is we want to mount the engine freestyle in there, because then we have to start now mapping out the transmission, how the 8 HP transmission is going to connect to the engine and how it's going to fit in that space.
I've been researching this transmission because I'm interested anyway.
Okay.
Turbo Lamech. Have you looked at that?
Yes.
So that would be swapping out the chip inside the TCU for a standalone.
Yeah, I have
That'll
that
work
whole
with
setup
anything.
already.
You bought Turbo Lamech?
No, I bought someone so long ago. I had to look at my notes. I was going to put paddle shifters on the steering wheel and change the shift pressure in the transmission. Yeah. So it's going to shift like a dual clutch. Right. It's not going to have that lazy like. It's going to be bang, bang, bang. So it should be glorious when the car's being driven.
4 inches. Actually, yeah. So I would need four of these bolts. This thread pitch is diameter, but 4 inches long.
You said that one was too small?
Too long. I need it like this much shorter.
We've got a mini Schaefer right here.
It's amazing. Beautiful. I don't want it too long because then it'll end up hitting the actual frame rail. What's the other? Do you have any of the short ones?
Right here.
Yeah, let me see if that works. Nice, that'll work. Right there. A little bit more. Yeah.
Like lower the car, roll the motor here, and see for you too how the steering, because this is where the steering linkage comes out from the steering shaft. We got to figure out too what the link is going to look like, especially if we use an E36.
Yes, and it's going to sit up front as opposed to it sat back here before.
It's going to be steer from the front.
So
that's the back.
You don't know if the shaft will even make it up there.
It probably won't. But
yeah,
I mean,
with that motor.
I'm going to order. A company makes a shaft for an E36 with basically a rod that you cut to length.
Oh, nice.
And you modify.
I'm just worried if it's going to be hitting like, you know, the
Oh,
exhaust
no,
manifold and all that.
No, dude, you're right. That's why I said part of this exercise is to pull the motor back, lower the car, raise the car up again, and you need to see how much room we have for a steering rack here and for the rack and pinion to sit up front, right? Also being aware that we'd like this to be the lowest point in the car, right? I don't want the rack to sit down here because you know
hit a bump.
Speed bump is gonna rip the rack off the car, which would kind of suck. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot of measurements you're gonna take. Just do me a favor. I don't want anyone underneath it.
This one has a dowel. Yeah, and that side is like a dowel, and it'll come right out.
So the other big thing that happened is E31 has been on Bay 1 for quite a while. Because we're making real progress in the car and I want to be able to move it around to test fit stuff and such, I wanted to make it mobile. So we have an engineering intern working for us right now, and I gave him a task. I said, Ian, design a portability system for the E31 that we can put the car on top of and move the car around the shop. So as all students do, he went into CAD and designed a really cool structure with I think 4x4s and wheels and casters and stuff like that. I said, great. I bought him all the supplies he needed. He built it. So now came the moment of truth. Put the car down.
Moment of truth, Ian. See if your shit works.
Yeah, right?
Exciting. All right, Ian, you are up. You may proceed.
Okay. The whole thing's solid.
Yeah, it is. It is.
The rear we can lower down on the jack.
just enough to get the arms out. Push your arms out.
Yeah, okay. Do that.
That's my guess. We'll see. Don't shoot me if I break this car.
Cannot break this car. This car has a Dayton SEMA.
How center we center? I'm gonna start lowering it a little and then I'll watch before I just drop it.
Yeah, you know what? We're going to have to put tops because actually this car.
That car doesn't have that kind of stuff, so
I was just confused.
if you want me to get like some piece of wood just to be safe, let's get it lower and see
Yeah, I
what
was
it's
gonna
like.
say.
So we moved everything out of the way, slid them under the car, gently lowered the car onto his contraption, and guess what?
You're gonna hit the motor?
Ian, watch that side. Make sure that nothing flexes on the body there. Watch the arm to the left. Wait, hang on. That lift arm is going to go on top of your thing, Ian. Yeah, that's not good. Let me think about this. Up and down from the lift.
What if I just get like a 2x4 each? Just to get that much more. Because if you get it just enough off, you could, at least have it. You could slide the lift arms out.
Ian, do we have more of this wood? No, I used all of it. Great.
This was a great example for him of theoretically, this should work. In the real world, does it work?
Well, if I lower it to there, is it going to be?
I'm not thrilled
Is
about
it?
this. No, we'll use wood that we have.
Yeah.
Ian's a very smart young man. I mean, we're really lucky to have him with us, and he's been doing some great stuff in the shop. This was a learning for him, I think, a big learning, to say, theoretically, you can say, oh, you know, the force vector is going to be here, and therefore there's not much stress over here, but as I tried to explain to him when he was designing it, things move around. And force vectors in the real world aren't nice and clean in one direction, you know, in one space. They move around. So as soon as you lowered the car and moved it a little bit, you could clearly see the wood stressing, as well as the casters that he installed. They start to stress a little bit.
Oh no, I didn't. It's bowing. What? It's bowing. You're cambered on my end. Let's not.
So I said, not happening. So what we wound up doing is we wound up using some rollers we have in the shop and put the car gently on the rollers. You know, we cut some wood to stack them up so the car's semi-flat. And very nicely we were able to roll it, you know, out of the bay, you know, into the corner of the shop. So now the car's semi-mobile. But my friend Ian is going to go back and kind of revisit his design and see how to make it more functional. E31. The next update, fingers crossed, we should have the bracket for the dry sump, the multiple pulleys fabbed up out of metal. Okay, so we can actually mount them on the car. We should also have a tensioner installed. We talked about, Matt and I, about how to do that. The other thing is we should have some prototypes of the mounts. And then a prototype of a tubular engine cradle that he and I talked about. So I'm really excited. So really, it's going to be, now the motor's mounted, solid, and it's where she's going to live. Then we got to talk about, okay, the transmission. And then it really comes down to where I'm going to really be thinking about it, is engine management and wiring. Because you can imagine, this engine has a few thousand million wires that, you know, all serve a purpose. So I'm gonna have to delve into that magical mystery tour. Anyway, as we say, what do we say, Maya? Like, subscribe, and share. And finally, enjoy the drive.